The war had burned across the galaxy for 12 long years. Star systems, once full of trade and life, had turned into silent fields of drifting metal. Powerful alien empires fought over territory, resources, and pride. Among them stood the Aurelian Dominion, ruled by Empress Lysera Vaith. She was young by her species' standards, but already carried the weight of endless conflict on her shoulders. Her fleets were strong. Her soldiers were loyal, but even strength has limits. Enemy alliances were forming at her borders. Divine cults were rising in unstable systems, claiming the ancient gods would soon return to correct the balance of power. Every decision she made cost lives. Every victory created new enemies. The Dominion was winning battles but losing stability. So she made a decision no ruler in her bloodline had ever made. But she agreed to marry a human. The announcement shook the imperial court. Humans were new to interstellar politics. They had only joined the greater galactic community a few generations ago. Compared to ancient species like the Aurelians, humanity was young, unpredictable, and physically unimpressive. Many alien nobles believed humans survived not through power, but through luck. The marriage was meant to secure peace. A treaty between the Dominion and the human coalition would end border conflicts and stabilize trade routes. It was political, strategic, logical. But in the grand hall of Aurelian Prime, logic did not calm outrage. The hall was filled with towering nobles dressed in silver armor and flowing ceremonial robes. Energy crystals glowed along the walls, casting soft blue light across the polished floor. At the center stood Empress Lysera, wearing white royal armor edged in gold. Her expression was calm, but the air around her felt heavy. Across from her stood the human, Ambassador Adrian Hale. He wore a simple formal uniform from Earth's coalition fleet. No shining armor, no glowing weapons, no visible power. His posture was straight, his face composed, his eyes steady. Whispers spread through the court. She binds herself to a lesser species. This is desperation. Humans are fragile. Lysera ignored them. She had studied humanity carefully before agreeing to this union. She knew they were resilient. She knew they survived wars on their own world that nearly destroyed them. But survival was not the same as strength. At least, that was what she believed. The High Priest of the Dominion stepped forward to begin the ceremony. An ancient words echoed through the chamber, binding two leaders in formal alliance. As tradition demanded, their hands were placed together over a ceremonial energy seal. The moment their hands touched, something changed. The lights in the grand hall flickered. The air grew colder. The energy seal beneath their hands pulsed violently, sending a wave of pressure through the chamber. Several nobles stumbled backward. The glowing crystals lining the walls dimmed, then flared bright again. Lysera felt a strange vibration move through her body. It was not physical pain. It felt observed. Above the hall's ceiling, hidden in space beyond normal sight, something ancient stirred. In a realm layered between dimensions, entities known in legend as the Watchers turned their attention toward Aurelian Prime. One voice echoed among them, a deep and distant. They bind themselves to humans again. Another voice responded, filled with quiet warning. They never learn. Back in the grand hall, the energy disturbance faded as quickly as it had appeared. The nobles looked around in confusion. Some reached for weapons instinctively. The high priest stepped back, visibly shaken. Lysera slowly turned her gaze toward Adrian Hale. He did not look surprised. He did not look afraid. If anything, he looked thoughtful. "Did you feel that?" she asked quietly, so only he could hear. "Yes," he replied calmly. "You knew something might happen." "I suspected," he answered. Before she could question him further, one of her court scientists rushed forward. Your Majesty, we detected a massive energy fluctuation from outside normal space. It was not from our technology. The nobles grew restless again. Divine interference, one whispered. Lysera raised her hand for silence. The ceremony resumed, but the mood had changed. What was meant to be a political contract now felt like something far older had taken notice. When the vows were completed and the court dismissed, Lysera escorted Adrian through a private corridor lined with ancient carvings. These carvings told the story of the Dominion's rise to power, of battles fought and gods defeated. She stopped before one particular carving. It showed a towering being of light confronting warriors of her species thousands of years ago. Our ancestors drove the gods from our space, she said. Adrian studied the carving closely. No, he said softly. You survived them. She turned sharply. What does that mean? He traced a finger near an ancient symbol etched beside the divine figure. This mark appears in old human myths too. We call them watchers. They tried to guide us once. And they learned we do not guide easily. Lysera felt a chill run through her spine. You speak as if this is normal. For humans, he replied, meeting her eyes steadily. Being underestimated usually is. Far above the planet, beyond sensors and sight, the watchers continued to observe. One of them whispered again, if the humans rise through marriage instead of war, the balance shifts. And for the first time in many centuries, even the gods felt uncertainty. The disturbance during the ceremony was officially described as a rare energy anomaly. That was the statement released to the public. The imperial court accepted it outwardly, but whispers did not stop. Nobles spoke in private chambers about divine signs and ancient warnings. Some claimed the gods had blessed the union, others feared it had awakened something better left silent. Empress Lysera did not rely on rumors. She relied on information, and the more she investigated, the more she realized the energy surge was not random. In the days following the marriage, Lysera observed her human husband carefully. Adrian Hale did not behave like a ruler who had suddenly gained power. He did not demand attention. He did not attempt to influence the court openly. Instead, he walked the palace halls quietly, asking questions about architecture, energy systems, and historical archives. He listened more than he spoke. To many nobles, this looked like weakness. To Lysera, it looked like patience. One evening, she found him standing in the Hall of Echoes, a chamber older than the Dominion itself. The walls were covered with carvings from a forgotten era, long before her species had built starships. These carvings depicted tall, radiant beings descending from the sky and interacting with early civilizations. Most historians considered them symbolic, religious exaggeration. Adrian stood close to one panel, studying it with intense focus. You seem very interested in our myths, Lysera said as she entered. They are not just myths, Adrian replied calmly without turning. Not entirely. Lysera approached him, folding her hands behind her back. Explain. He pointed toward a symbol etched beside one of the radiant beings. It was a circular shape surrounded by smaller lines, but almost like a star with orbiting fragments. This symbol exists in ancient human records too. Not identical, but similar enough to notice. It appears in cave drawings thousands of years old. That is impossible, she said. Our civilizations evolved separately. Yes, he agreed, but the Watchers did not. Lysera felt that strange vibration again, the same sensation from the ceremony. You speak of them as if you know them personally. Adrian finally turned to face her. His expression was steady, almost thoughtful. Humanity has been observed for a very long time. We were visited, tested, sometimes guided, but we did not follow the path expected. And what path was that? He walked slowly along the carved wall. Submission, dependence, stability through control. And that is usually how advanced beings manage younger species. Lysera's eyes narrowed slightly. And humanity refused? We adapted, he said simply. We survived catastrophes without divine help, wars, plagues, near-extinction events. At some point, the Watchers stopped interfering directly. Why? Because we became unpredictable. Silence filled the chamber. Lysera studied his face carefully. He did not boast. He did not speak with pride. He spoke with quiet certainty. Later that night, Lysera ordered access to restricted Dominion archives. Deep beneath the palace, ancient records were stored in sealed data vaults. Most of these files had not been opened in centuries. She reviewed logs from the earliest interstellar explorers of her species. Among them were strange reports, encounters with powerful entities beyond physical space. And these entities attempted to influence expansion, setting invisible boundaries and discouraging certain technological developments. One record caught her attention. It described a distant world rich with unusual energy signatures. The report noted that divine interference around that world was unstable and inconsistent. The world's designation was primitive at the time, Earth. Lysera leaned back in her chair slowly. The timeline aligned with early human history. As she processed this information, alarms flickered briefly across the archive interface. External space sensors had detected a fluctuation near the outer edge of Aurelian territory. The energy signature matched the anomaly from the wedding ceremony. It was faint, but present. Above the planet, hidden between layers of reality, the Watchers observed again. They research, one voice murmured. They question, another replied. They were always dangerous when they questioned. Back in the palace, Lysera returned to her private chamber where Adrian was reviewing diplomatic reports. He looked up when she entered, reading her expression instantly. You found something, he said. Yes, she answered. Our earliest explorers encountered resistance from higher beings near your world, interference that faded over time. Adrian nodded slowly. We call it the silence. The silence? When they stopped trying to guide us. Lysera stepped closer, lowering her voice. Why would God stop guiding a species? Because control becomes impossible when the subject refuses to fear extinction, he replied. Before she could respond, the chamber lights dimmed suddenly. No, the air temperature dropped sharply. A pressure filled the room, heavier than gravity itself. The walls trembled slightly, and an unfamiliar glow formed near the center of the chamber. It was not fire. It was not light. It was something between both. A shape began to form inside the glow, tall, radiant, shifting as if made from energy rather than matter. Lysera felt her heart pound, though she kept her posture straight. Adrian did not step back. The presence spoke, its voice layered and echoing as if many minds spoke at once. Empress of Aurelian Dominion, it said, you bind yourself to a species long marked by defiance. Lysera forced her voice steady. And you are? We are what your ancestors named gods. The air grew heavier. And what do gods want? She asked carefully. The glowing figure turned slightly toward Adrian. We come to warn, it said. Humanity does not bend. Humanity disrupts. Adrian's expression did not change. We learned long ago, the entity continued, that your kind spreads instability across cosmic order. Lysera looked between them. He married me for peace. The entity's glow flickered faintly. Peace is never the final result when humans stand at the center. The chamber trembled again as the presence intensified. Outside the palace, unseen energy rippled across the sky. Lysera realized with cold clarity that her political marriage had drawn attention far beyond rival empires. She had not only united two civilizations, she had awakened the Watchers, and they were no longer content to observe. The glowing presence in the chamber did not fade immediately. It hovered between dimensions, its light shifting like a living storm held inside invisible walls. The air felt dense, heavy with pressure that made breathing difficult. Empress Lysera stood firm, refusing to kneel or show fear. Adrian Hale remained at her side, calm as before, though his eyes were focused sharply on the entity. The Watcher did not move like a physical being. It pulsed, expanding and contracting slowly, as if measuring them. "You interfere again," Adrian said quietly, his voice steady. The entity's light flickered slightly. "We observe. We correct when necessary." "Correct?" Lysera repeated. "You call invasion correction?" The Watcher shifted toward her. "Order must be maintained. Civilizations rise too quickly. They destabilize balance." Lysera's voice hardened. "You mean they grow beyond your control?" The chamber trembled again, though the entity did not lash out. "Your ancestors once resisted us," it said. "They survived only because they were limited. Humans are different. They multiply. They expand. They adapt beyond prediction." Adrian stepped forward slightly, placing himself half between Lysera and the glowing presence, though he did not raise a weapon. "We adapt because survival requires it," he said calmly. "You tested us before." The Watcher's glow deepened. "We guided your early development. We offered structure." "You offered containment," Adrian corrected. Lysera turned sharply toward him. "Containment?" Adrian nodded. "There are records on Earth, ancient myths about beings descending from the sky, demanding obedience, shaping early civilizations. But every time something changed, humans would learn from the interaction. We would copy the knowledge, improve it, expand beyond the limits given to us." The Watcher's voice layered over itself, slightly distorted now. "You were meant to remain dependent." "We refused," Adrian replied simply. Silence filled the chamber for a long moment. The Watcher's light dimmed slightly, then intensified again as if replaying ancient memories. Lysera realized that this was not the first confrontation between humanity and these entities. It was part of a much older pattern. She spoke carefully. "If humanity is such a threat to your balance, why not destroy them when they were weak?" The Watcher responded without hesitation. "We attempted containment through natural correction. Catastrophes, environmental pressure, internal conflict, they endured." Lysera felt a chill. You caused those events?" "We adjusted probabilities," the entity answered. "We guided pressures." Adrian's eyes darkened slightly, though his voice remained controlled. "You tried to erase us without direct war. That is why you stopped." The Watcher did not deny it. Lysera's mind moved quickly. "You feared direct conflict." "We avoid inefficiency," the Watcher corrected. "Because you could not guarantee victory," Adrian said quietly. The air tightened again, and for a brief moment the chamber lights shattered along the walls. The entity's glow pulsed violently before stabilizing. It did not strike. It did not attack. It only observed. "Humanity grows again," it said. "Now bonded to expanding empires, you accelerate instability." Lysera stepped fully beside Adrian now. "Instability to whom?" she demanded. "To species who choose their own path." The Watcher shifted its focus toward her. "Your marriage increases the probability of galactic transformation beyond calculated thresholds." Adrian gave a faint, almost humorless smile. "You mean we change things?" "Yes," the Watcher answered. Lysera felt something shift inside her. All her life she had believed the gods were distant guardians, ancient forces that occasionally intervened for guidance. Now she saw the truth more clearly. They were not guardians. They were managers of cosmic stability, and humanity did not fit into their managed design. "You came to warn me," she said slowly. "Warn me about my husband." "Yes. And what happens if I ignore your warning?" The glow flickered, softer this time. Conflict increases. Adrian's voice remained steady. It always does. Degrowth brings conflict, but conflict does not mean destruction. The Watcher seemed to study him again, as if recalculating. Your species exhibits dangerous persistence. Thank you, Adrian replied calmly. Lysera almost glanced at him in disbelief at his tone, but she kept her composure. The tension in the room was thick, yet no violence had occurred. That alone spoke volumes. You fear us because we do not follow patterns, Adrian continued. We survive conditions that should erase us. We rebuild faster than models predict. We refuse extinction. The Watcher's light dimmed slightly again. Refusal of extinction disrupts cosmic equilibrium. Lysera lifted her chin. Then perhaps equilibrium needs disruption. The entity fell silent for several seconds. Then the glow began to contract slowly. We will continue to observe, it said. Interference is not yet required. Yet? Lysera asked. The final pulse of light flickered once. Your union shifts probabilities. The consequences remain uncertain. With that, the presence faded, dissolving into faint sparks that vanished into empty air. The chamber returned to normal temperature. The pressure lifted. Only the damaged walls and broken light panels remained as proof of what had occurred. Lysera exhaled slowly for the first time since the manifestation began. She turned toward Adrian, studying him more deeply than ever before. You knew they feared you, she said. I knew they feared unpredictability, he corrected. You speak of this as if it is normal. For humans, it is, he replied. We were born into uncertainty. Our world tried to destroy us many times, and we survived without gods. Lysera walked toward the window overlooking her capital city. Ships moved across the sky. Citizens lived their lives unaware of the conversation that had just occurred. I married you for peace, she said quietly. Adrian stepped beside her. Peace is still possible. With gods watching? They have always watched, he answered. The difference now is that you see them clearly. Lysera looked at him carefully. She had believed humanity needed protection within her empire. Now she understood something far more dangerous. Humanity did not need protection from gods. The gods needed protection from what humanity could become. And somewhere beyond visible space, the Watchers continued calculating. For the first time in ages, their calculations did not guarantee control. But the silence left behind by the Watcher did not bring comfort. It brought awareness. Empress Lysera understood now that her marriage had not only shifted political balance between empires, it had disturbed something far older. The palace security teams confirmed that no physical breach had occurred, no ships had entered orbit, no energy signatures remained. Yet the entire chamber had felt the presence. The court could not deny it. The gods were no longer distant myths. They had stepped into the present. In the days that followed, tension spread quietly through the Dominion. Religious factions claimed the Empress had invited divine judgment. Political rivals whispered that humanity would bring cosmic war. Lysera listened to every report, but she did not allow panic to shape her decisions. Instead, she summoned Adrian to the strategic council chamber deep within the palace. It was a room shielded against external observation, built during earlier conflicts when gods had once interfered more directly. I need the full truth, she said as the chamber doors sealed behind them. Not diplomacy, not comfort. Truth. Adrian nodded slowly. Then I will give it. He activated a holographic projection from his wrist console. The image showed Earth's early history, primitive cities, rising empires, wars, collapses. Every advanced species has a moment when it becomes visible, he began. Not visible to neighbors, visible to something larger. For humanity, that moment came when we developed technologies that altered our planet permanently. Lysera studied the projection carefully. And that is when they intervened. Yes, not openly. They adjusted variables, increased natural disasters, encouraged instability through subtle influence. They hoped pressure would slow our development. And it failed. It always failed, Adrian said calmly. We rebuilt. We adapted faster than they predicted. When direct influence did not work, they withdrew and observed instead. Lysera folded her hands behind her back. Why did they not destroy your world completely? Adrian's eyes remained steady. Because extinction is unpredictable. They fear unintended consequences. Before she could respond, the room temperature dropped sharply again. This time there was no gradual build. A violent surge of energy filled the chamber, bending light and distorting sound. The walls trembled as a brilliant sphere of radiance formed above the central table. The Watcher had returned. But this presence felt stronger, sharper. You speak of us as if we are limited, the entity declared. Adrian did not flinch. You are! The glow intensified, filling the chamber with blinding light. Lysera raised a defensive energy shield instinctively, but the Watcher did not strike her. Instead, the chamber dissolved around them. The walls vanished, replaced by a vast emptiness filled with stars. Lysera realized they were no longer standing in the palace. They stood in a projection, a constructed reality. This is not real, Adrian said calmly. The Watcher's voice echoed across the false cosmos. Reality is flexible. The stars shifted suddenly into flames. Entire planets cracked apart in silence. Lysera saw visions of her dominion burning, her fleet shattered, her people fleeing through empty space. The destruction felt real, detailed beyond imagination. Even her shield systems registered false impact warnings. This is your future, the Watcher declared. Humanity accelerates instability. Chaos spreads wherever they expand. Lysera felt fear attempt to rise inside her chest. She had seen war before, but this scale was overwhelming. She turned toward Adrian, expecting him to show shock or anger. Instead, he studied the illusion carefully. You are showing worst-case probabilities, he said calmly. Not certainty. The Watcher's light pulsed violently. Probability shapes reality. Only if accepted without challenge, Adrian replied. The stars shifted again. Now Earth appeared before them, cracked and broken. Oceans boiled away, cities lay in ruins, humanity reduced to scattered survivors struggling under dark skies. Lysera looked at Adrian sharply. So this is your world? Yes, he said quietly. The Watcher's voice lowered. This is what awaits when resistance persists. For the first time, Lysera expected anger from him. Instead, Adrian stepped forward into the illusion of destruction, walking across the cracked ground of his burning planet. He knelt and touched the soil. This has happened before, he said calmly. Not exactly like this, but close enough. We faced extinction events, ice ages, global wars, near total collapse, every time we rebuilt. The illusion flickered slightly. You mistake destruction for finality, Adrian continued. We do not. The Watcher's glow dimmed for a fraction of a second. You assume survival. We prepare for it, he corrected. The illusion shifted violently again. This time, the battlefield changed to ancient Earth. A primitive human staring upward at glowing figures descending from the sky. The Watchers teaching, commanding, shaping early civilizations. We gave you knowledge, the entity said. And we learned from it, Adrian answered. The projected sky fractured suddenly. The false reality began destabilizing around them. Lysera noticed that the environment responded not to the Watcher's will alone, but to Adrian's presence. The projection became unstable as he refused to react with fear. You cannot intimidate a species trained by extinction, Adrian said quietly. "We are shaped by disaster. You test us with visions of collapse, but collapse is where we learn fastest." The Watcher's voice grew layered, uncertain. "You adapt beyond modeling." "Yes," Adrian agreed. "That is why you fear us." The illusion shattered like glass. For the council chamber reformed around them abruptly. The glowing entity hovered weaker now, its energy less stable. Lysera stood straighter than before. She felt the shift clearly. The Watcher had attempted to break her will through fear. Instead, it had revealed its own limitation. "You are not omnipotent," she said firmly. The entity pulsed once more. "We seek equilibrium." "Equilibrium without growth is stagnation," Adrian replied. The Watcher's light began to fade. "Your union increases unpredictable variables." "Good," Lysera said. For a brief moment, silence filled the chamber again. Then the Watcher vanished. This time, it did not threaten. It did not warn. It withdrew. Lysera looked at Adrian slowly. "You faced a god without weapons." He met her gaze calmly. We faced worse without gods." She understood something now with absolute clarity. The gods did not fear human power. They feared human endurance. A species that could survive the end of its own world would never be easy to control. And somewhere beyond space and time, the Watchers recalculated. For the first time in ages, the outcome did not favor divine certainty. The second withdrawal of the Watcher did not bring relief to the cosmos. It brought tension. Across distant star systems, subtle energy shifts began appearing in patterns that Aurelian scientists had never recorded before. Long-range observatories detected faint distortions along the borders of normal space. These distortions did not resemble fleet movements or natural phenomena. They were controlled, measured, watching. In the hidden realm where the Watchers gathered, a debate began. "They escalate," one voice echoed through layered dimensions. "They adapt faster than correction cycles allow," another replied. "The humans' influence spreads." "They are bonded to an expanding empire." The presence that had confronted Adrian and Lysera pulsed with quiet instability. "Direct erasure risks unpredictable outcome. Indirect containment fails." Silence followed, but it was not peaceful. It was uncertain. Back on Aurelian Prime, Empress Lysera stood before her war council. Unlike previous meetings focused on enemy fleets or trade routes, this session addressed something more abstract and more dangerous. She ordered research divisions to analyze the ancient archives more deeply. Records of early divine interactions were reopened. Religious authorities were brought into scientific discussion, not for faith, but for data. The Empire would no longer treat gods as untouchable mysteries. They would be studied. Adrian attended these sessions not as a ruler but as an advisor. He did not exaggerate humanity's past, nor did he glorify it. He explained that survival against the Watchers had never been about defeating them. It had been about refusing to break under pressure. When the gods increased difficulty, humans increased adaptability. When disasters came, humans diversified solutions. The cycle continued until interference became inefficient. One senior Aurelian general finally asked the question others feared to voice. If the Watchers choose open conflict, can humanity defend against them? Adrian answered honestly. We cannot fight gods directly with weapons alone, but we do not need to defeat them. We need to make interference too costly. Costly? The general repeated. Unpredictable consequences, Adrian said. Every time they attempted large-scale manipulation, it created long-term instability that affected other civilizations. They value order. We disrupt it by surviving. Lysera listened carefully. She began to see the larger pattern. The gods were not warriors seeking conquest. They were custodians of a controlled universe. Humanity represented uncontrolled growth, and uncontrolled growth frightened beings who depended on predictable balance. As this realization spread through the Empire's leadership, an unexpected event occurred. Several outer colonies reported spontaneous technological breakthroughs in energy efficiency and quantum communication. These innovations were not planned. They were the result of independent research teams experimenting freely after years of war restrictions were lifted. Humanity had shared open scientific databases with Aurelian engineers after the marriage treaty, encouraging collaborative progress. The speed of advancement accelerated. New propulsion systems reduced travel time between systems. Medical technologies improved survivability across multiple species. Defense platforms became smarter and more adaptive rather than heavier and more destructive. Each improvement increased the Empire's flexibility. In the Watcher realm, alarms echoed silently. They expand. They innovate beyond expected trajectory. Their influence spreads through alliance. They strengthen others. The realization struck deeply. Humanity did not dominate through conquest. It empowered partners. And that created networks of resilience too complex for simple containment. On Aurelian Prime, Lysera walked through the Imperial Innovation Center, observing engineers from both species working side by side. There was no visible tension now. There was competition, yes, but it was productive rather than hostile. The union she had arranged for peace had ignited growth instead of dependency. She turned to Adrian as they watched a new quantum relay activate successfully. "They believed this marriage would destabilize us," she said. "In a way, it did," Adrian replied calmly. She looked at him. "It destabilized stagnation," he clarified. Suddenly, the sky above the capital shimmered faintly. Citizens paused as a wave of light rippled across the upper atmosphere. Sensors detected divine-level energy forming. But this time it did not manifest in a single chamber. It appeared above the planet itself, massive and visible. A luminous figure stretched across the sky, larger than before, layered with countless shifting forms. The Watchers were no longer whispering quietly. They were making their presence known to the entire Empire. Panic spread briefly through the streets, but Imperial fleets held position without firing. Lysera ordered no aggressive response. Adrian stood beside her on the palace balcony, watching the sky. The radiant form spoke, its voice resonating across the planet. "Civilizations of Aurelian dominion and humanity, your expansion exceeds projected equilibrium." Lysera stepped forward, projecting her voice through planetary communication systems. "We expand through cooperation, not destruction." "You accelerate unpredictability," the Watcher declared. Adrian activated a transmission channel linked to human networks across allied systems. "Unpredictability is not chaos," he responded calmly. "It is evolution." The sky flickered. "Evolution destabilizes cosmic structure." "Only if structure refuses to evolve," Lysera replied. The tension was enormous. Entire fleets waited for signs of attack. But the Watchers hesitated. In their layered realm, probabilities surged through complex calculations. Direct intervention risked widespread resistance. Erasing humanity now would require erasing allied systems as well. That cascade could fracture other controlled regions of space. The cost grew higher by the moment. Below, as citizens across the Empire watched their Empress and the human stand side by side under a divine shadow, there was fear, but there was also defiance. Adrian spoke one final time. "You fear extinction of your control. We fear extinction of our species. That difference defines us." The radiant form pulsed intensely, then slowly began to shrink. The shimmering wave across the sky faded. "We will observe," the Watcher declared once more. But this time the tone carried something new. Caution. The sky cleared completely. Silence followed, but it was different from before. It was not the silence of divine superiority. It was the silence of reconsideration. Lysera exhaled slowly. They showed themselves to the entire Empire. Yes, Adrian said. They wanted to intimidate. They revealed doubt instead. Lysera looked across her capital city, where citizens were already returning to their tasks, calmer than expected. Humanity's presence had shifted something fundamental. The gods were no longer untouchable myths. They were beings capable of hesitation, and hesitation was the beginning of balance. Far beyond visible space, the Watchers recalculated once more. For the first time in ages, the possibility emerged that intervention might accelerate exactly what they feared most. Humanity was no longer merely surviving divine attention, it was shaping it. After the Watchers revealed themselves above Aurelian Prime and then withdrew once more, the galaxy did not return to normal. Something fundamental had changed. For the first time in recorded history, divine entities had appeared openly before an advanced civilization and chosen not to act. That decision spread faster than light through diplomatic networks, independent systems, and hidden observatories. Other empires that had quietly feared divine interference began watching closely. If the Watchers hesitated here, perhaps their control was not absolute. Within the hidden dimensional realm of the Watchers, calculations grew unstable. Their influence had always depended on predictability. Civilizations rose, expanded within limits, and eventually slowed under controlled pressures. Humanity had broken that model. Instead of collapsing under pressure, it multiplied solutions. Instead of isolating itself, it formed alliances that increased collective resilience. And the marriage between Empress Lysera and Adrian Hale had not merely united two governments. It had linked adaptive human unpredictability to one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. One of the Elder Watchers spoke across the layered void. Direct suppression now risks widespread cascade. Another responded. Indirect manipulation increases adaptive response. They strengthen when challenged. Then equilibrium cannot be restored through pressure. Silence followed. Not peaceful silence, but strategic silence. Back in physical space, the Dominion's research divisions continued expanding cooperative innovation. Human quantum modeling systems were integrated with Aurelian energy grids, increasing efficiency across entire sectors. Defense systems were redesigned to adapt in real time rather than rely on static patterns. Some medical exchanges extended lifespans across species. Trade networks expanded into once isolated systems, spreading shared stability instead of conquest. Lysera observed these changes carefully. She had once viewed her marriage as a necessary compromise to prevent collapse. Now she saw something deeper unfolding. Humanity did not simply survive instability. It converted instability into growth. That quality was dangerous to gods who depended on cosmic equilibrium remaining predictable. One evening, as twin suns set beyond the capital's horizon, Lysera and Adrian stood on the palace balcony overlooking the vast city below. Ships moved smoothly through the sky lanes. Construction drones repaired outer towers damaged during earlier wars. The Empire felt stronger than it had in decades. They will not accept permanent change easily, Lysera said quietly. No, Adrian replied, but they have already accepted something they never wanted to. And that is, that they cannot guarantee control. Before she could answer, a subtle distortion appeared above the city. It was not violent this time. It did not ripple with threat. It formed gently, like a door opening slowly. A single Watcher manifested, smaller than before, its energy steady but less overwhelming. Lysera remained calm. You return without force. The entity's voice carried less dominance than earlier manifestations. Observation continues. Adrian stepped forward slightly. You calculated outcomes. Yes, and? Direct suppression increases instability beyond tolerable threshold. Lysera understood immediately. Or you risk spreading the very chaos you claim to prevent. Correct. The Watcher hovered silently for several moments, studying both rulers. Human adaptability introduces uncontrolled variable into cosmic system. Adrian nodded once. We introduce evolution. Evolution disrupts static balance. Static balance stagnates. The Watcher did not respond immediately. Instead, it projected a series of probability streams into the air between them. Lysera saw branching futures, some filled with war, others with flourishing interstellar cooperation. In nearly every stable projection, humanity remained present, not dominant, but integrated. You survived nearly all projected extinction attempts, the Watcher said quietly. We always have, Adrian replied. But your refusal to vanish alters cosmic equilibrium permanently. Lysera stepped closer beside her husband. Then perhaps equilibrium was flawed. The Watcher pulsed faintly, almost as if processing emotion. Equilibrium existed to prevent total collapse. And yet collapse is how we learned, Adrian said. For a long moment, the entity did not speak. It shifted its luminous form, less imposing now, more focused. Adaptation is contagious, it finally said. Your species spreads resilience through alliance. Lysera felt a faint smile form. You mean cooperation? Yes. Silence stretched between them, but it no longer felt like confrontation. It felt like negotiation. The Watcher continued. If we withdraw fully, probability of uncontrolled expansion increases. Adrian answered calmly. If you intervene again, probability of unified resistance increases. The logic was simple and unavoidable. The entity's glow softened slightly. Then observation remains primary function. No interference, Lysera asked. Interference only if collapse becomes certain. And who defines collapse? Adrian asked quietly. The Watcher's light flickered. We will reassess parameters. It was not a surrender. It was not defeat. But it was the closest admission the Watchers had ever made that their framework required revision. The distortion in the sky slowly closed. The Watcher vanished without threat, without warning, without dominance. Lysera exhaled slowly. They are adapting, she said. Adrian looked toward the horizon. Everyone adapts eventually. Across distant star systems, subtle changes began unfolding. Other civilizations sensed reduced divine pressure. Independent research accelerated. Alliances formed more freely. The galaxy itself seemed to breathe easier, as if a long, unseen weight had shifted. In their hidden realm, the Watchers restructured internal calculations. For the first time in cosmic history, equilibrium was no longer defined by control. It was defined by coexistence with a species that refused extinction. And that shift began not with war, not with rebellion, but with a marriage meant for peace. The gods had not been defeated. They had been forced to evolve. And evolution, once unleashed, does not return quietly to its cage. Years passed after the Watchers reduced their interference, but the memory of those confrontations never faded. Across the Dominion and beyond, the story of the Empress who married a human for peace became more than political history. It became a symbol of transformation. At first, many believed the marriage had simply prevented war between two civilizations. In time, they realized it had done something far greater. It had shifted the balance between mortality and divinity itself. Under the joint leadership of Empress Lysera and Adrian Hale, the Dominion entered a period unlike any in its long existence. Expansion continued, but not through conquest. Trade networks linked distant systems that had once feared each other. Research stations collaborated across species lines. Military fleets trained together, not only in strength, but in adaptability. Humanity's approach to problem-solving spread quietly through the empire. Instead of rigid hierarchy, councils encouraged debate. And instead of fearing uncertainty, commanders prepared for it. The Watchers continued observing, but their presence grew subtle. They no longer manifested openly in palaces or skies. Their calculations shifted from correction to caution. They studied humanity not as a threat to be contained, but as a force to be understood. The more they observed, the clearer the pattern became. Humans did not seek to dominate gods. They did not seek divine war. They sought survival and progress, even in hostile conditions. One evening, long after the initial confrontations, Lysera and Adrian walked through the ancient Hall of Echoes, where they had once discussed forgotten carvings. The stone panels still depicted radiant beings towering over early civilizations. But now new panels had been added beside them, and these carvings showed alien and human figures standing together, not beneath gods, but under open skies without divine shadow. Lysera paused before one of the older carvings. "My ancestors feared these beings," she said quietly. "They believed survival meant obedience." Adrian examined the same carving thoughtfully. "Fear is natural when power seems absolute. And yet," she continued, turning toward him, "you never feared them." He considered the question before answering. "We feared extinction more. Once you live through near extinction enough times, fear changes shape. It becomes fuel instead of paralysis." Lysera studied him carefully. That simple statement carried the core of everything that had changed. Humanity's greatest strength was not technology or numbers. It was psychological resilience. The species that survives disaster repeatedly develops a relationship with fear that other civilizations rarely understand. Far beyond visible space, the Watchers observed this moment. Their realm had grown quieter. Debate still existed, but urgency had faded. They had tested humanity through pressure, through illusion, through direct confrontation. Each attempt had revealed the same outcome. Resistance did not create collapse. It created adaptation. One of the elder Watchers spoke softly within the layered void. "They do not seek our removal. They seek independence," another replied. "They endure correction. They convert it into strength." There was no anger in these exchanges now, only recognition. Back in the physical universe, a distant star system experienced a natural cosmic disaster. A collapsing neutron star threatened nearby colonies, including both human and Aurelian settlements. Instead of waiting for divine intervention or fearing cosmic punishment, joint fleets mobilized instantly. Evacuation protocols activated, emergency stabilization satellites were deployed. Engineers from multiple species worked side by side under intense radiation storms. The operation succeeded. Millions were relocated safely. Infrastructure losses were minimized. The disaster that would once have been seen as divine wrath became a test of cooperation and planning. The Watchers analyzed the event carefully. Intervention had not been required. Humanity and its allies had responded faster than expected, with minimal chaos. "They no longer require correction," one Watcher concluded. "They regulate themselves," another agreed. And that realization marked a turning point, even in divine thought. The Watchers had once defined equilibrium as controlled limitation. Now they began to understand equilibrium as distributed resilience. Humanity did not destroy balance. It redefined it. On Aurelian Prime, Lysera addressed the Imperial Assembly on the anniversary of her marriage. She spoke openly about her original intention. She had married for peace. She had believed humanity needed alliance to survive galactic politics. Instead, she had discovered that humanity carried something older than politics and stronger than divine intimidation. "They fear us," she said before the assembled court, not with pride, but with clarity. "Not because we are violent, not because we seek conquest. They fear us because we endure what should erase us." Adrian stood beside her, silent but steady. "They fear a species that refuses extinction," she continued. "A species that grows through hardship. A species that turns disaster into foundation." The assembly listened without mockery, without doubt. The past years had proven her words. Above the planet, no divine presence shimmered, no radiant figures appeared. The Watchers remained in their realm, watching but not intervening. Their calculations now included human unpredictability as a permanent variable. In time, even divine beings learned caution. Lysera later stood alone on the balcony overlooking the city lights, reflecting on how a political compromise had become cosmic transformation. Adrian joined her quietly. "You once asked why God stopped guiding humanity," she said softly. He nodded. "I understand now," she continued. "But they did not stop guiding you. They stopped controlling you." Adrian looked toward the stars. "Control is fragile. Adaptation lasts longer." Far beyond the visible universe, the Watchers observed once more. Their conclusion, though unspoken across galaxies, had settled into certainty. Humanity was not feared because it was powerful. Humanity was feared because it could not be erased. And that truth, once realized, reshaped the balance of gods and mortals forever.